He said something in an interview that made me stop everything I was doing. He said I had to kill the player I was to become the player I needed. Kill the player I was to become the player I needed to be. Most people spend their entire careers trying to protect the version of themselves that produced their first success. They hold on to it, they defend it. They resist any suggestion that the thing which worked before needs to change. Thierry Henry did the opposite. He killed it not because it was not working, but because he understood at the specific moments his career demanded it, that the next level required a different version of himself, and that willingness to let go of who he was in order to become who he needed to be done twice at different points in his career in completely different directions is one of the most extraordinary psychology stories in the history of football. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to PsyWealth. Richie. Today, we are covering someone whose story I have been wanting to make for a long time, because Thierry Henry is not just a football legend, he is a complete psychology lesson about identity, reinvention, sacrifice, and the specific courage of being willing to become someone entirely. Do when the situation demands it. If you are new here, subscribe. Now let's get into it. Thierry Daniel Henry was born on August 17, 1977, in Les Ulis, a housing project south of Paris. He grew up in genuinely difficult circumstances. His parents divorced when he was young. His father, a demanding, sometimes harsh figure, pushed him relentlessly. He said in his diary of a CEO interview that his relationship with his father, the approval he sought and sometimes did not receive, shaped his psychology in ways that took decades to fully understand. He came through Monaco's academy. He debuted professionally at 17. He played for Monaco, then Juventus, and at Juventus, his first real experience of failure at the highest level. He was played as a winger rather than a striker and struggled to produce the impact he had shown in France. He was confused, frustrated, uncertain about his future. And then Arsène Wenger called here is the first reinvention, and it is the one most people know about but few fully understand in its psychological depth. At Juventus, Henry was a winger, a fast, technically gifted winger who was not producing at the level his talent suggested he should, and Wenger, who had coached Henry as a teenager at Monaco and knew what he was capable of, brought him to Arsenal and then moved him to center forward, and everything changed. But here is what most people miss about that transition. It was not just a positional change, it required a complete psychological reinvention. As a winger, Henry's game was about beating his man, delivering crosses, creating for others. As a center forward under Wenger, he had to learn to hold the ball, to bring others into play, to time his runs, to develop a relationship with the goal that his winger's psychology had never fully demanded. He had to kill the winger to become the striker. And that killing, that willingness to abandon a comfortable identity for an unfamiliar one, produced the Thierry Henry that Arsenal fans still talk about in hushed reverence. 226 goals, Arsenal's all-time top scorer, one of the greatest strikers in Premier League history, all of it produced by someone who was willing to die as one version of himself in order to be reborn as another. Here's the second reinvention, and it is the one that I think reveals Henry's psychological depth most completely. In 2007, at the peak of his individual powers, Henry left Arsenal for Barcelona, and at Barcelona, surrounded by Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, Ronaldinho, he faced a specific and psychologically complicated reality. He was no longer the most important player. He was no longer the one the entire system was built around. He was a contributor, a role player, a supporting cast member in a production, whose star was 20 years old and already incomparable. And Henry said, I had to adapt. I had to sacrifice my personal style to help the team and embrace Messi's role. He adapted. He sacrificed. He embraced a role that his individual ego could have refused. He said, you need to fail. Failing is part of the learning process. It is okay to fail and lose. Just make sure you learn from the experience. He was speaking from the specific experience of someone who had been the best player at his club, the unchallenged star, the one everyone looked to and had chosen to become something smaller so that something larger could exist. And in doing so, he won the Champions League. The treble, the one major club honor that had eluded him at Arsenal. By becoming less individually, he achieved more collectively. Here is the part of Henry's story that most football coverage never reaches. In his Diary of a CEO interview, one of the most honest and psychologically raw conversations any elite athlete has ever given, publicly he revealed, something that fundamentally changed how I understand everything he achieved on the pitch. He talked about people-pleasing, about the quest for personal identity beyond professional success, about the specific psychological hunger for his father's approval that drove so much of his career behavior, about discovering later in life, through genuine self-reflection, that the relentless drive that produced everything he achieved was also connected to wounds that needed healing rather than performances that needed perfecting. He said something that I think is the most important thing any football legend has ever said publicly. He admitted that for much of his career, the performance was partly about filling something, about getting the love and approval from the crowd that certain relationships had not consistently provided, and that recognizing that understanding the emotional architecture underneath the achievement was one of the most important things he ever did, not as a footballer, as a human being. Here is something Henry said that I think is the most practically useful piece of psychology he has ever shared publicly. He said, when you hit a wall, find a way to climb over it, go around it, or simply break through it. That sentence delivered with the specific authority of someone who has hit genuine walls and found genuine ways through is not motivational poster language. It is a description of the actual decision-making process that produces performance under pressure. You hit a wall. You do not wait for the wall to move. You evaluate the options. You find the path over, around, or through that your specific situation makes available. And then you take it, not dramatically, not with a great speech, just you find the path and you take it. Henry found his path at Juventus by going to Arsenal. He found it at Arsenal by killing the winger and becoming the striker. He found it at Barcelona by killing the star and becoming the contributor. 3 walls, 3 different paths, one consistent psychological quality, the willingness to find the way, rather than wait for the wall to disappear. And now I want to speak directly to you, because I think Henry's psychology contains something that applies to every single person watching this. Most of us are holding on to a version of ourselves that was successful at some point. A skill, an identity, a way of operating that worked, that produced results, that generated recognition, that became the foundation of how we see ourselves and how others see us. And we protect it, we defend it, we resist the suggestion that it needs to change, not because it is still working optimally, but because letting it go feels like losing something fundamental about who we are. Henry killed the player he was twice to become the player he needed to be, and each time the new version produced something the old version could never have reached. What version of yourself might need to die for the next version to be born? What comfortable identity might be limiting the growth that a different version of you could produce? And what emotional architecture might be underneath the drive? What hunger for approval or recognition or validation that is worth understanding honestly, rather than simply performing past? Henry found those answers later in life. You can start finding yours now. And finding the genuine, honest, psychologically curious finding might be the most important work you ever do. Not for the performance. For yourself. Thierry Henry grew up in Les Ulis, was played out of position at Juventus, was reinvented as a striker by Wenger, killed his individual star identity to serve Messi at Barcelona, won everything, and then in the most honest conversation he has ever given admitted that the relentless drive underneath it all was connected to something more human and more vulnerable than any goal he ever scored. That honesty, that willingness to examine the emotional architecture beneath the achievement, is the most powerful thing about him. more powerful than the 226 Arsenal goals, more powerful than the World Cup and the European Championship, more powerful than any reinvention on any football pitch, because it is the reinvention that actually lasted. The one from footballer to human being who understood himself. Subscribe to PsyWealth Richie. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that becoming someone new is not losing who you were. It is discovering who you were always capable of being. We will see you in the next one.